Hi, and welcome to another edition of SeniorCents. My name is Charlotte Buchanan. I'm the Financial Literacy Specialist for SEFCU, and I'm joined today by Colleen Zachman, SEFCU's Debit and Credit Card Fraud Analyst. So today I thought we would just go over some questions that we seem to get a lot from members. Does that sound okay, Colleen?
That sounds great. Thanks, Charlotte.
Great, thanks. So the first one is, a lot of times people make comment that they feel that it's safer to use their credit card than a debit card. Is that true, or what are kind of the differences between the two as far as my protection levels?
That's a great question. With the credit and debit cards, we offer MasterCard, and with that we do have zero liability for fraud. And what that means is fraud is defined as, I did not do this transaction. You know, I see a transaction on my statement or on my online banking. It's something I didn't authorize. I didn't authorize anyone to use my card to make that purchase. Now there is, we do have dispute rights through MasterCard. And to dispute a transaction, that would be, I purchased something and there's something wrong with that product that I purchased, the product or service. So maybe you purchased a pair of shoes online and you got the shoes and they were the wrong size. You ordered a size 9, you got a size 9.5. That could be a transaction that you can dispute through MasterCard. Okay. Then there's scams, which we'll talk a lot about today. With scams, that's something that you participated in, and it's just like it says, you were scammed out of the money. A good example of that would be, I saw a pair of shoes online, and maybe it was a pop-up ad, and I purchased those shoes. I sent money through a P2P as, person to person. I sent it as family and friends. So that's like sending cash to the individual, to the seller. We generally cannot dispute those transactions if you do not receive the product. Okay. With fraud, it would be, as I said, there's a transaction on your statement for a pair of shoes that you didn't authorize. You didn't, your child didn't use your card. You didn't authorize the transaction. We would be able to help you with that. Does that help you answer the question?
Absolutely. So if I would find myself, or if one of our members would find themselves a victim of a scam, is it a good idea to put a freeze on their credit bureau?
We do recommend that if you've given out personal information, to go ahead and contact the credit bureau, and you can put a freeze on your credit. And then if someone does apply for credit in your name, they wouldn't be able to do that. You're given a password or a PIN number, and that would need to be used before anyone could apply for credit.
Okay. What about, I've seen a lot of advertisements on TV for different services that help you watch for identification theft, or just watch your credit bureau. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, those services just monitor your credit bureau. They can't see transactions coming in. So, they'll just let you know if someone did try to apply for credit in your name. But we do offer services through SEFCU that do monitor for transactions that come through. So you could sign up for automated fraud alerts, or you could sign up for alerts and controls through online banking. With alerts and controls, you can be notified anytime a transaction is made on your credit or debit card. So that way, if a transaction was made, if your card was compromised, then you would be alerted right then. You would know that there was a transaction that came through, and you could alert us, and we could block your card.
Is there a fee for that service?
Nope, there's no fee for either of those.
Wonderful. Okay, I also see a lot, I get things all the time about, you can pay using some of the different cash apps. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe give me some tips as far as, if I'm using those, the best way to use them?
We always say to do dual authentication. And when you are using those services, as I mentioned before, make sure that you're using them as goods and services and not friends and family or pay with friends. There are different verbiages on some of those P2P merchants. And the best thing to do is to use it as goods and services, because as I said, when you use it as friends and family, that's just sending cash. An example of why those were created is if we go to lunch together and I forget my wallet and I say, oh, can you pay for me? And you say, sure, you pay the bill, then I send you through, one of the P2Ps, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. I pay you for my lunch. We know each other. I know that what you did, you paid for my lunch. You know me, I'm sending you the cash. The cash per se.
Okay. So another big topic lately has been artificial intelligence. Have you been seeing any scams that use artificial intelligence?
Probably one of the biggest ones that we see is the grandparent scam. And that's where the bad actor, the scammer, is using AI to impersonate a grandchild. They use their voice, or they try to disguise their own voice to sound like, a younger person or that. And they try to get the grandparent to think that, the grandchild's in trouble and that they need to send money to get them out of trouble. Usually they're in jail and they need help. It's something urgent, and they tell the bad actor tells the person, the grandparent, not to contact anyone, not to contact family, because they're, in trouble and they don't want to get in more trouble with their parent.
Okay, that's pretty scary.
It's very scary. Yep. So, you always want to make sure that if you do get a phone call like that, reach out to your family members. See if, the grandchild really is in trouble. Reach out to that grandparent or grandchild and see if, they're in trouble. Try to reach them.
Okay, even though they're telling you not to, don't listen to what they're being told.
Don't listen to, never listen to the person on the other end of the phone. Do your own research and check things out.
Great. So, I haven't really heard about these a lot lately, but data breaches. For a while it seemed like constantly on the news we were hearing of large companies where they were being a victim of a data breach. How is that handled kind of like with SEFCU? I mean, what do you do with that?
Well, they have slowed down in the recent years, and that's because of the EMV, the chip card, because that chip cannot be counterfeited. The reason that a lot of the data breaches were happening was because the mag stripe could be skimmed, so that information was stored, and then the bad actors were using that information to make counterfeit cards. So, the EMV chip, as I said, can't be counterfeited, so that stopped a lot of the data breaches. If there is a data breach, we are notified by MasterCard. We review the information that we receive, and we decide if it's necessary to reissue a card or not. A lot of times we'll put a code on an account just to monitor that account for any suspicious activity.
Okay. Well, so kind of speaking about reissuing cards, if I happen to have several credit cards or debit cards from maybe other accounts that I have, either at SEFCU or somewhere else, is it better for me to cancel those off and just limit my number of cards that I have?
Well, that's a good question. It's really, I think, personal preference, but they always say to keep, the oldest card, whatever your oldest card is. But if you're not using cards, definitely I would cancel those, or maybe even lower the credit line. If you have a real high credit line and you're not using that card, it's best to get that lowered so it, reduces your risk for fraud.
Okay. So am I better to, if I happen to have fraud, like let's say on my credit card, am I better to cancel that or just put a block on it?
You can do either one. You could cancel it or you could put like a temporary block. Like with SEFCU, you can go in and even if you think that maybe your card is lost, you've misplaced it, you can go in and put a temporary block on it until you find it. If you thought you maybe lost it in the house or in the car or something. So really, I think, either way, it's like I said, it's a personal preference on how you want to handle that.
Okay. And how long does it take to have that block applied? If I would call, let's say like right now, how long does it take for that to go into effect?
It would be blocked immediately.
You know, I had a friend the other day that called me, you know, knowing that I work for SEFCU, and asked, she said that she was going to place an order online and they had requested a cashier check rather than her using like her debit or credit card. Do you feel a cashier check is safer for her to use, or should you always, when you're ordering online, try to use like a debit or credit card?
I would definitely try to use a debit or a credit card, and that goes back to my original point of, you know, dispute rights. You know, through MasterCard, we do have dispute rights. So when you use a credit card, if you don't get the merchandise, if you get the wrong merchandise, if you get maybe something that you didn't order, or you get a different size or that, it's always best to use a debit or a credit card just for that, for the dispute rights.
Okay. And what are your thoughts about having more than one checking account? So having, you know, one that maybe you just use for your payroll deposits and to pay your bills, and a second one that you use for online purchases, or even if it's not a checking account, if it's like a different credit card. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, that's a really good idea, and we do recommend that for people to have, you know, maybe 2 credit cards, you know, one with maybe a lower credit line, and they use that just for online purchases, and then another one that they use maybe for everyday purchases or travel or something like that. That way, if one of the cards gets compromised, you know, most of the time you're probably going to get compromised online by using it at an online merchant. Then, you know, you're only blocking that one card and you're not interrupting your daily usage with the other card.
And kind of the last question I have, and then we'll go into some tips and everything, is I've had some people ask about, like when they travel, why we ask them to put on what we call travel plans. Why is that?
We do monitor transactions, so we do monitor what comes through on accounts. And you know, if we see something unusual, if it comes across our radar, you know, maybe a transaction in Florida and your address is here in Peoria, and we don't know that you're traveling, you may get blocked. You know, you may have interrupted card usage because we didn't know that you were traveling. So it's just safe to, you know, give us a heads up. We'll make a note on your account, just so if something does come through, you could have uninterrupted usage with that card.
Great. You know, normally we think of scams as affecting our people who are our seniors, who are 50 and older. But what we're really hearing from the Federal Trade Commission is that 41% of the scams in 2022 affected people starting in their late 20s and all the way up into their, you know, mid 30s. So it's no longer really something that is just affecting our seniors. So Colleen, what tips do you have to help all of us prevent scams on our accounts?
Well, and that's a good point. Scams, they have no age limit, they have no minimum, they have no maximum. We see, you know, if you have a cell phone, an email address, or even a landline, you can be susceptible to a scam. What we recommend is that if you do receive a phone call that from a number that you don't recognize, you know, let it go to voicemail. Don't answer that phone call. If by somehow you're tricked into answering it, maybe it looks like a phone number that you know, or it is a phone number that you know that's been spoofed, then just hang up on the person. You know, once you realize it's not someone that you want to talk to, you know, all niceties go out the door. Just hang up on them. If you get maybe an email, you know who the sender is. Don't just open an email or click on any type of link in the email unless you know that sender, and verify that it's a legitimate link. So, you know, merchants that need to renew maybe your credit or debit card information, they're not going to send you an email to renew that. They'll, you know, a lot of times if it's maybe an online service or maybe a subscription, it's going to pop up on your TV that it needs renewed, and you can do it that way. Another suggestion would be the alerts that I talked about earlier. You can enroll in those for your debit and your credit card, and that way if a transaction's made on your account, then you would be notified right away that there was something that came through on your account, If it's not something you authorize, then give us a call and we can get that card blocked. Another tip is gift cards. If you ever receive a phone call from someone that's asking you to send gift cards, don't do it. Don't go out and purchase gift cards. The IRS, they don't want you to pay your back taxes with a gift card. A legitimate merchant is not going to want you to settle a debt with a gift card.
Okay. I've already been in stores where they're now asking. I've heard like people in line, they're asking, have you been coerced into purchasing these gift cards?
Yeah.
So that should be something that we actually appreciate and not get upset about, right?
Definitely. They're trying to do their due diligence, just as we do. If you come into one of our offices and try to make a large withdrawal, cash withdrawal, you may get a few questions from our tellers. We're just, looking out for you. We want to make sure that you're not involved in a scam, that you're not taking that money and boxing it up and sending it somewhere, or you're going out and purchasing gift cards with it.
Great. Another thing that I've heard about are pop-ups. So, something on the computer asking you to do something. Can you maybe tell us what to do if we happen to see a pop-up?
Yes, if you do get a pop-up that says that, your computer's been infected with a virus, to call a phone number, or I've even gotten the phone call saying that my computer was infected. What they're wanting you to do is they're wanting you to download an app onto your computer or even your cell phone or your smart TV. And that allows them to take over that device. And then they do put in harmful information on your computer to make it look like maybe there's illicit photos on it or something that should not be on there. And then they trick you into going out and purchasing gift cards. So what you would want to do is, if you get a pop-up like that, you'd want to unplug your computer, turn it off, take it in to a reputable merchant. Usually we recommend wherever you purchase the computer and get it cleaned to get that harmful information off of there.
Okay. Why do they want the gift cards?
That's just an easy form of payment for them. Once they get those gift cards, what they do is once you purchase the gift card, you read that number off to them, then they're online and they're using that gift card. They're purchasing, usually it's an online merchant, they're going in and purchasing tablets or cell phones and then reselling those. So it's easy money for the bad actor.
Well, great. Well, do you have any other tips for us to help protect our accounts from scams?
Yeah, we like to say that if you have a cell phone, you have an email, you have a landline, you could be subjected to a scam. They can, the bad actor is going to reach out to you any way they can. So, most everyone, even young kids, teenagers, have a cell phone, have an email address. So they are susceptible to getting scammed. What we always recommend is, if you do not recognize the phone number that's calling you, don't answer the phone. Let it go to voicemail. If it's important, they'll leave a voicemail and you can call them back. That's not to say that, a phone number could come through as a phone number that you recognize. And because there is technology out there that can spoof phone numbers. So you may get a phone call from someone that's in your, address book of your contact list. If you do answer the phone, and it's not someone you want to talk to, it's a bad actor, a scammer, go ahead and hang up on them. There's no reason that you need to be polite. Just hang up, don't give them any information. If someone does call you and they want to verify a transaction, SEFCU does make outbound calls to verify transactions, but we're not going to ask for any information. We're not going to ask you for your account number, your card number, passwords, login information for online banking, none of that. So if you do get a call like that, again, hang up on them, call us directly. Use the number on the back of your card and we can check to see if the call was legitimate or not. Another thing is the alerts and controls. As I mentioned before, add those to your debit and credit cards. And if a transaction comes through, you'll get a text message just letting you know that that transaction came through. If it's not something you authorized, you can call us right away.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for spending some time with us today. We just hope that we never have to have that phone call with you talking about a scam on your account.